This item on the agenda is a discussion regarding the Newtown Corporation.
I was going to suggest to my fellow council members that we afford the opportunity first to any of our appointees to the board to speak, and frankly anyone else who's interested in the issues involving Newtown Corporation and recent events, and then we could follow with questions. That would be my suggestion.
And 113 Court Street. I was on the JDNC since its inception, and I passed a letter out to you people this evening. I think one thing that has not been addressed, there's been a lot of newspaper articles, there's been a lot of talk back and forth around town, but the one thing that wasn't addressed is how the executive director was fired. I think it was unfair. I don't think it was founded. I'm on the executive committee of the board. We had a meeting 2 nights before she was relieved of her position. There was nothing said at that executive meeting about her being fired on Thursday at the meeting. We covered points that we wanted her to improve in areas. We discussed the possibility of her losing her housing that she had. We discussed a lot of points, but it never came up once that we were going to fire her at the board meeting. The board meeting was held on Thursday. It was the 10th of December. And the board meeting progressed like it normally does. 2 of us board members had to leave for another meeting, leave early. We left. I was one of those people. The meeting evidently was adjourned shortly after, and after the executive director left, it was reconvened, and there was short discussion, evidently. I have minutes. 2 minutes are covered in those minutes. 2 60-second minutes, not very long, and she was terminated. And I don't think it was fairly done. She wasn't there. It was not covered with her what the problem was, and I think she was unfairly dismissed. And that's my comment.
Dave, could I ask a question or two? You want to come back up for a second? Because as you know, tonight is an opportunity for us to try and gain an understanding. You've already assisted in that, but just so we're clear, the meeting that was 2 nights before, which I believe was December 8, 2009, correct, was also a night that we had a council meeting in this room. And in fact, we discussed the contribution to the corporation for 2009, and we discussed an additional contribution to be put in the budget for 2010. Am I to take it that there was an executive committee going on that at the same time?
That's correct.
All right. And you attended that?
I did.
All right.
There were 4 of us there. I'm sorry, I think there were 4.
And those 4 were who?
Dick Weaver from the township, Newtown Township, myself, Tim Patero, he's appointed by the township, Paul Salvador, he's borough, and who else? There was one other there. Frank Tyrell. I'm sorry, Paul. Frank Tyrell. He's a township appointee.
And did you stay for that entire meeting?
The executive meeting, yes.
All right. And I take it there was no discussion about a termination of the executive director?
No.
I'm sorry.
In fact, I have a synopsis of the meeting that was sent out by Mr. Tyrol. Nowhere in that does it say she was going to be terminated. I can turn it over to you if you like.
Well, it would be helpful. We do have some materials, but not all. And I would ask for a copy. I'm sure fellow council members would like to see it also.
I can forward that.
Thank you. Two nights later was apparently a board meeting followed by the executive committee meeting. You were at the board meeting, but you did not attend the executive committee meeting.
Correct. Actually, it was not an executive meeting that was held. It was a continuation of the board meeting.
Executive session also.
Thank you.
Then it was reconvened.
Were the board members in attendance advised that there was going to be an executive session for purposes of discussing the executive director and a possible termination?
No, it was not in the agenda.
And you were not present for the executive session that followed where the termination was made?
No.
When did you find out that the termination had occurred?
About 7 o'clock that evening. Dick Weaver called me at home and told me that it was decided to terminate the executive director.
Did you receive any explanation as to why you were excluded from that meeting and that decision?
Well, I had to leave the meeting to go to another meeting.
All right.
Myself and Mr. Swartz, we both had another meeting to go to.
All right, but you didn't know that was going to be discussed and decided either?
No.
Has the full board of the Newtown Corporation since that night met to consider the action taken in executive session to terminate the executive director?
No.
Thank you.
Good evening, Paul Salvatore, Newtown Corporation, and I've been involved since the very beginning with Newtown Corporation, as Dave has. We were there at the visioning meetings, and we actually came on the board at the same time 3 years ago. Much of what Dave says is correct, except I just want to add a little bit to it. On Tuesday night prior to our regular board meeting, there was an executive meeting at which time we talked about the termination of the existing contract with the Newtown Main Streets manager, because as we stated, we weren't Main Streets anymore. So that discussion had been ongoing, and Mr. Patera, who had brought a copy of an agreement for us to review, it was also discussed that these things would be talked about at Thursday's meeting. Mr. Tyrol sent out a synopsis of the meeting, as Dave said, the next morning, and several things had been talked about. It was my understanding that this was all to be covered on Thursday. And in fact, after I received Mr. Tyrol's email, knowing that Dave had said that he would have to leave that meeting by 5:30 to attend another function, I suggested that we move it up in the agenda so it could be covered. Now, keeping in mind that I sent that to our chair, who sets the agenda with the executive director. I asked Mr. Patera to forward a copy of that agreement to all board members so they would have it prior for discussion. Mr. Patera had said he would, but unfortunately his father-in-law passed away. He asked if I would do it, and I did do that. So I was upset not to see it on the agenda on Thursday, knowing that we had talked about wanting to talk about the contract. When we got to the end of the meeting at about 5:30, Dave had to leave. He excused himself. Corky excused himself, and they left. And several of us said, aren't we supposed to be talking about this? I thought this was going to be on the agenda. The three remaining members, Tim, myself, and Frank. And Dick said, well, yeah, we can talk about it if you want to. So that's when we decided to go into executive session with all our board members there that were left, 7 of us, and have a discussion. So out of that discussion, and it wasn't 60 seconds. We talked for about an hour and 20 minutes about a lot of issues. And then we re-adjourned, we voted, and that's it.